I think that we get so worried about the tough times. And if it weren't for tough times, we wouldn't have the infinite banking concept. Nelson didn't start when everything was fantastic. He started when he had $800,000 of debt at 23% interest. We just want everything to be the easy road. And we don't look at, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if all hell breaks loose? Hello, 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 and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you very much for being here. All right, you guys asked, and Shane volunteered. So you guys wanted to know, when do I leave my off the farm job? And so I reached out to all of my clients, and so far, Shane's the only brave one. So as he's shaking his head, you guys need to watch this on video because it's going to be good. So Shane he had an off the farm job. He bought some cattle. He moved everything to the farm. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to hit all the kind of key points of what you guys are concerned about or what we think you're concerned about as of to making that step. So Shane, thank you very much for being so brave.
You're welcome. I hope I do you justice.
Yeah, you'll help. There's always nuggets. We were talking a little bit before we recorded, and there was a whole bunch of good nuggets that maybe we could talk about again. If not, you guys lost out. Sorry, but it really is. There's a lot here to kind of unpack. Feelings, finance, family, all of those things come into play when you want to go from a steady paycheck to no idea what you're going to have. So, Shane, can you just tell us a little bit about, okay, let's start with, what did you do off the farm?
So right away, I was custom fencing for a neighbor for a couple summers. And this oil field thing started kicking up in our state. I had some friends that left and were doing it. And I went to work for Neighbors Drilling. We were drilling oil wells.
Okay. And how old were you?
I was, 23, I think,
Okay.
24.
Okay.
So this was early 2005, I think I went out there.
Okay. And so you got a couple cows, ran them with Dad, and then just a quick synopsis kind of, so Shane doesn't have to tell his whole story because he just did to me. But he got some cows, he ran them with Dad. Dad decided to start some businesses. So Shane just took that opportunity to buy more cows and kind of start all of his own stuff. So at that point, when you bought more cows, how many cows did you have and working at the same time?
When I first started, I bought my first cows in 2003.
Okay.
I remember, this is the only date I really remember. Not the only one, but it was December 8th.
I hope you remember your wedding date.
Yeah. That one too. So I bought 50 cows December 18th, 2003. And then that's when the mad cow that ruined Christmas struck a few days later. So they went from $900 heifers to, I don't even know if they had a price on them for quite a while after that. It was pretty rough. But then when I started working out and there was more room to add some cows, I went and I bought some open heifers from, I don't remember. I know I bought some from a neighbor. I did this a couple years in a row. And I bred a bunch of these open heifers and I kept some and I sold some. So I was able to build some and build my herd and still generate some cash flow on the backside of it.
Okay.
I did that for a couple years and I think I got about around 120 cows and stayed there for a handful of years while I was still working.
Okay. So you worked off the farm and ran cattle for how long that was 5 years.
Yeah. Right? So it started, I was going to go out one spring and work. I was going to work 6 months. I ended up staying a year. And at that time, I had more money saved up than I've ever seen in my life at 20 some years of age. And so I quit in the spring, was going to come home, calve out these heifers that I'd bred. I wasn't going back. And then I think in 3 months, all my savings had dried up and I had never taken an operating note. And I called back for a job, see if they could had room for me. And I went back to work for another 4 years.
So you were 9 to 10 years doing both, working off the farm and ranching at the same time.
Well, like 5. Yeah,
Okay.
5 years.
Okay. But that's a great indication of the fact that you can think you're going to stop and then something happens and you can go back, right?
Right.
So it doesn't, and then after that, you stopped, right? Because then after that, 4 years or 5 years or whatever, you had said that it was just a little bit, it was getting to be a little much, burning the candle at both ends. Neighbors were helping, dad was having to help, probably got tired of asking for favors.
Yeah. So that was, and I was borrowing a lot of equipment and I didn't buy a lot then, and dad still had some. And I think I picked up a little bit of things like that, but a little bit of equipment I did purchase, I was able to pay with cash because I had a job and that was nice. But there were weeks we started out, we worked a 4-on-4 schedule. So we'd work 4 days and get 4 days off and go back and work 4 nights. And later on we switched to a 7-and-7, doing 7 days, 7 days off, 7 nights. There was weeks where I'd look forward to going back to my job because I got more rest. Working 7, 12-hour days, I got
Yeah.
more rest. So
Yeah.
after
So
years that's kind of what just burned me out. You'd
Yep.
work a night shift and you'd come home and I don't know what they put in that gas station coffee, but you'd get your second wind and you'd get home and pretty soon you'd be up for 24, 30 hours. And that
Mhm.
was common. And that happened
Mhm.
at least 2, 3 times a month.
So you were working nights and days? You were shifting, you
Well,
were going
I'd
between
get
you?
off from my pay job if we'd get off a night shift and I'd drive home and then I'd work during the day at home.
At home, right, but were you flopping between days and nights at your off the farm job? Or was
Yeah.
it
So
strictly nights?
we'd work 7, we would
7
work
days and
7
then
days during the day and then we'd take a week off and then we'd go back, we'd work 7 nights.
My husband did nights. When we first met one another, he was working nights. So we'd see each other like, I don't know, hour and a half every day or something. And he'd go in and then he'd sleep half. It was awful. Like nights are a killer. But I did some research. The guys that are working at the mine and your oil fields that are going days to night, that
Uh,
shortens your life extremely. Like it takes like 10 or 15 years off your life to
I've
go
heard
days
that.
to nights. It's not good.
No, no,
It's not good. Yeah,
no.
my brother did something similar. He would work during the day and then he'd come home and farm at night. And then he got a different job for a little while where he was working nights and then he would farm during the day. And that too just it burnt him out to the point where he's like, I can't do it.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the transition. So you were tired, number 1. That's the
Yep.
first problem. We're tired. We can't do it all. Did you sit down financially and say, hey, and now let's keep in mind that Shane was not married, no kids at the time. So there's that too. We have to consider we didn't have a family, but did you sit down and actually look at the numbers? Because I know you're a bit of a numbers guy to say, hey, I can make this transition? Or did you just say, I'm a guy, I can live in a cardboard box. It'll all be okay.
I think it was more the latter. You know, to be honest, I think it was. I mean, I'm sure there was some rough math, but there's no deep dive into it.
Okay.
And it was a point just the driving and being away. And I was either going to do it or not. I was either going to sell my cows and go work in the oil field full time if there wasn't a full time opportunity here. And I had that discussion with who it needed to be had with. That's kind of when I got the opportunity to buy this place. And it's like, well, we're going to figure it out one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
So if I got to work a little bit locally or do something to fill that gap. So there was a big enough place here. My grandpa was still around. I mean, there was work to do. and just be able to make room for myself to make that happen.
So before we got on, Shane said, I don't know how long this podcast is going to be because my advice is just do it. so,
Yeah.
so for those of you listening, some people want to have all the numbers, but here's a reason I like that advice of just do it. And it's the same thing that even my brother found is the amount of work that is left undone at home. If you're not focusing on your operation and you have half the day is somebody else's business and the other half the day is your business, how do you expect that to grow? So what did you see when you quit your off the farm job? What did you see happen to the ranch in the expansion piece or just being able to focus on it?
It seemed like, well, I know my vehicle didn't leave the yard for a long time. Well, I was tired of driving,
So we
but
saved money on gas.
I saved money on gas. For quite a period of time, there was just a lot of focus on doing some fixing and building some efficiencies, some things you always want to get done, but it's always short time. When you're doing two things at once, it seems like when you get home, you have in your mind what you want to do to keep moving forward. And then you get home and you put out some fires. You're trying to finish up what you didn't get done the last time you got to it, dealing with new headaches that were unforeseen, something broke down, go on. And then all of a sudden, the job that you wanted to do while you're at home, all of a sudden it got watered down or shortened up because everything else came up.
Mhm.
Something else came up. So when I was able to quit my job, you were able to spend more time and do things correctly. They weren't patched together. So there's just a lot of that, a lot of fixing, a lot of figuring out how am I going to, now that I have a little more time, how am I going to do it better? How am I going to do it more efficient? Where are the financial holes that I need to fill? Do I need some more cows? How am I going to make my rotation work better? Different things like that. If I do grow, how am I going to make it grow? You had time to focus on and answer those questions.
So you had time to work on the business, not just, I'm going to go buy some cows. Let's put some fence up and put them in the pasture and away we go.
Yeah. I was able to spend more time with all them people that I was pulling favors from and kind of return them favors. And that was highly valuable. You can't put numbers on that.
But the piece that I think people miss is they're so busy making money off the farm that they don't even know the potential of the farm. They don't know the potential of what the cattle could bring, what kind of crop we could have. And you don't even know how much you're overspending by not paying attention to it.
Right.
Or how much you're losing by not having things fixed correctly, having to do them twice. Like the stress factor of all of that makes a difference as well. Like if you're going to have a heart attack at 30 because you're doing two things, why? Like,
right.
You got to slow down. And it was very evident. And it doesn't matter what it is, if it's farming or ranching, or if it's an off the farm job. For those of you that are maybe listening that don't farm and ranch, I did the same thing. When I started this business, I had a little chocolate candy business. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know I can sell chocolate candy because I was, and it was successful. But guess what? I'm making freaking chocolate while I should be in my office talking to people about infinite banking. And so as soon as I stopped doing everything else, this business took off because I was able to focus on it. You're able to, like, I know you belong to some cattle groups and those sort of things. And that too, you now are around peers because otherwise you'd be working. You're not
Right.
able to go to some convention or some meeting or something. You came to the Black Sheep Summit and were able to put yourself in a position where you could be around other like-minded people to then grow more.
Yeah. That's huge. That's something that my grandpa told me years ago, is like, everybody's got to take their turn and contribute. So that's where I got involved in some, it started out some local things. Then I got involved in a state cattle organization, and, it kind of snowballs from there, putting yourself around people that are in a similar industry, and we all do the same thing, but we all do it different. And great ideas come from there. You can bring them ideas home, tailor make them to your own operation, and it's a great sounding board, those places to go and meet those people. So adds huge value to a place in my mind.
Yeah. What I like is I gave you guys a bad time, all you North Dakotans that were sitting at the same table at the client summit. But it's unbelievable when you start putting yourself into groups of people that are not in your same area. What are they doing that's different than what you're doing? Even though it's a different part of the country, it doesn't mean you can't take away some of those things. But
Right.
you would not have been able to do any of that and meet any of those people and make any of those connections if you're just continuing to work off the farm.
Right. Right.
So now you're married
Yes.
and you got a little person,
Yes.
but your wife still works.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that that's important also for people to understand that she didn't come into the relationship and go, oh, well, you're a rancher. I should not be working because ranchers' wives don't work. Now, you don't have to, but even my brother's wife still works. And so if we want to be able to contribute, maybe continue to fix stuff, have less money borrowed at the bank, that's not a bad thing to have one spouse off the farm, working off the farm so we can provide just health insurance, which is extremely expensive.
Right. Her passion is not cows and tractors and things like that. And her job allows her to follow one of her interests. And there's days she loves her job.
Yep. There's days.
There's days just like me. It's like, I hate it. I hate cows. I don't want any more cows. So we all, no matter the industry or the occupation, we all have good and bad days. But
yeah, and I think that also is a key point. You're not going to have, just if you're farming or ranching full time, you're never going to have a perfect day. Like there's always going to be something. And so it's just going to be less stressful because you know you can get it fixed or taken care of instead of, gosh, now I have to go sleep because I have to go to work in a couple of hours, or I better sleep fast. This is what my husband always said. I better hurry up and sleep so I can get up and go finish doing whatever I need to do. Well, then he never slept because he had to hurry up and sleep and he was worried about sleeping, you know? So I think that the just do it comment is fantastic because if you do it, it doesn't mean you can't ever go back to working. We have so many positions open in this country right now that you're not going to be at a lack of a job opportunity.
No. The opportunity to start farming and ranching or do it full time, not everybody even has that opportunity if they wanted the remote interest in it. I mean, it doesn't exist. I'm not saying it can't be done, so I don't want to throw water on anybody's aspirations, but it's tough. So if you are doing it and you want to do it full time, do it. You can find another job. If it doesn't work out, you took a crack at it, gave it your best. If you have to go back to work for a while, refocus. Do it. I remember, so knowing this podcast was coming up, I was thinking about this story. So when I was in high school, I went to it was an FFA convention. They had a Green Hand and Made for Excellence conference. So I was, I don't know, sophomore, junior, senior in high school. And they had a national officer come in and speak. And he did not give a real positive outlook on the future of agriculture. And this is that FFA event.
I was going to just say that's a great speaker to have at an FFA conference.
So it wasn't really, maybe it wasn't that it wasn't negative, but it wasn't the real heartwarming image that all of us want to have. But it was based in some reality. And I don't forget, he come out of one of the I states, so he talked a lot about corn, soybeans, and hog farms. And he's saying it's tough out there for these guys, and his message was you guys might have to find an off-farm job. And he told in the area what guys were doing, where he was from, and gave some examples. And as a teenager, and I stood up and I asked him, I was like, well, it sounds like that works good for grain farmers that maybe have some off seasons to work somewhere else. Well, what about livestock guys? You're either feeding hay, making hay, pulling out the manure, whatever. It's a full cycle. And his response at the time was, if you want to do it bad enough, you'll figure it out. And I thought that answer was crap. At 15 years old, it was crap. 10 years later, I was in the oil field and I remembered his words. I was like, boy, he was spot on. He was right. And now
Yep.
fast forward more years and I've done both of them and figured out a way to get rid of that off-farm job. The lesson is the same. If you want to do it, you will figure it out.
Yeah.
So it kind of comes full circle.
If you don't want to take the risk, you're never going to take the risk. It's a matter of what hurts worse, where you're at or where you're going to, right? What hurts less, where you're at or where you're going to go. And so that's actually super good advice because it's true in every industry. If you want it bad enough, you will figure out how to do it. But it's also a failing forward thing. There's a lot of, I could care less if I fail. Like, I don't really think of failure. I'm just like, oh, I tried it. That didn't work. All right, let's just move on to the next thing. It's just my personality. But there are people that need to hear you failed, but that was a lesson learned from that. Like, my daughter does not like not knowing everything. And she was mad about something the other day. And I'm like, it's a lesson. What? Why are you mad about that? You just learned from that experience of what not to do. Those lessons are equally as good as what to do. And so if we decide we're going to farm or ranch full time and all of a sudden we can't, that doesn't mean we can't go back to work. And Shane was saying before we got on, what skills you have may differ. You might find a whole different job doing a whole different thing, like building fences, or maybe you can sell some mineral. Maybe you can sell seed, fertilizer, chemical. I have a lot of clients that are doing little side hustles. As long as it doesn't interfere with what you're doing, I think that's okay. What happens to my seed and chemical fertilizer guys is if they're really good at it, now all of a sudden that's interfering with farming because they're so busy selling something that they've become this great salesman and they're making a bunch of money there. They actually flip and they're like, oh, I'm not going to farm any extra, or I'm just going to lease it all out because I'm so busy selling seed and fertilizer that I don't have time for the farming piece of it.
Yeah. Oh. I've seen that too.
Which is, guess what? We just found a different avenue of maybe something that we loved doing. I mean, I have a lot of clients that do photography, the women especially, but they're doing photography. Well, there's nothing wrong with that because there's what they're niching out is a whole Western way of living. And they're just it's usually a rancher not a farmer's wife, but it's usually a rancher's wife. And they're just capturing that piece of their life, which I think is very, very cool. And so if you can get into that and you can do those things, there's nothing wrong with that to find other avenues of things you're going to like to do.
Right. It doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're happy doing it and you're paying the bills and taking care of your family. And so if you're going to come home and farm or ranch or whatever the business is and do it the way you think you want it done, you better be able to look at that business and say, maybe be able to change that a little bit too. If that becomes your full-time job that your family is reliant on, maybe you need to make some changes in that business too. So it is more profitable, or so you do have more time, or whatever those changes are. So it is more successful. Sometimes success and opportunity doesn't always look like how we want it to or how we think it should look. When we come home to work full time, that you better be willing to look at your operation now with clear, open eyes now that you have time to focus on it.
And if you're not, you're still, in my opinion,
you'll be back working another job.
Yeah, if you're not running the business, you're still not doing it correctly. So
Right.
if you're not sitting down and refocusing, you may as well go punch a clock because you're gonna still have all those same struggles.
Right.
So, have you in how long have you worked ranched only that you've not worked off the farm?
Um, since 2010.
Okay, so 14 years.
Yep.
In those 14 years, I am assuming, and I know, we've had some bad cattle prices.
Yep.
Have you struggled to make the payment on the ranch? Have you had to be creative about, "Holy crap, what am I gonna do? Because cattle prices dropped. I need hay." We had a drought, 2 years ago, we had a massive drought. Hay was astronomically expensive.
Right.
So, what did you do in those times?
I've never not made my payments at the bank. I'm sure I was broke, but I don't know. I always had money for beer and groceries.
So, you figured it out.
I figured it out. That drought was tough. So I don't know. We got drought payments out of that deal based on your cattle numbers and stuff. So there was some USDA assistance, and I'd sold some cows, so there was some cash in the bank, and I was like, well, we'll weather through this. And then COVID, and there's a child born into our family, so there's a lot of personal stuff going on too. And when the dust cleared, I had no idea. You talk about keep track of your numbers. I have no idea where some of that money went, and just gone. It went so fast, but it's kind of coming back around now. So
Yeah.
everybody was paid, and there was, I don't know, life still seemed to go on, but I'm still scratching my head. It's like, what really did happen to that?
When you need you figure it out, right? Just
Oh,
like that
yeah.
speaker said, "If you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out."
Yep.
And you figured it out. I think that we get so worried about the tough times, and if it weren't for tough times, we wouldn't have the infinite banking concept. Nelson didn't start when everything was fantastic. He started when he had $800,000 of debt at 23% interest. So I think that we forget very quick. We just want everything to be the easy road, and we don't look at, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do if all hell breaks loose?" And I didn't have any money. I didn't even have money to write my book. I had to pre-sell the book in order to have the guy put the book together and create the cover and get the ISBN, and thank God I had friends that edited it for free, and like I figured it out. I had to be super creative in order to get done what I needed cuz I had my credit cards were maxed. I was at the end of the rope.
Right.
It's either now or nothing. Like
Yeah.
this is, and we kind of sometimes like in the drought, most people are in that similar situation. We're gonna have to figure it out. If it's USDA money, or we're gonna have to not go buy something. But obviously it wasn't so bad that you forgot how bad it was. I mean, you obviously kind of forgot how bad it was. Like you
Yeah.
remember, but geez, did we have one less beer? Because we just couldn't afford we couldn't afford the case. We had to go to
Yeah.
a six-pack, you know?
Yeah. I remember telling my wife's like, so coming out of that drought, operation looks a little bit different and stuff like that. So I pushed some managing some cattle different and pushed some sales back. So the glut of my sales aren't all in the spring, and also it rolled to the fall, and making that circle, you got a little tight, started on some borrowed money earlier, and we got close to the fall waiting for some yearlings to be sold. I was like, well, I said, don't get me wrong, we're always poor, but we're damn near broke too here. So I was like, don't be spending or buying nothing here. We got to hold out another 30 days.
Yeah, so no online shopping, no
Yeah.
nothing fancy.
Yeah. But when we
Because
got
you
in that
got
drought, that was the first time I'd taken a policy loan just to try it out, tried on some operating and stuff. So I tried that in the past, and I was like, oh, this is simple. This is good. Well, that was the first time I bought a piece of equipment. I kind of needed one. I was just going to pay cash for it. old school. This was like I'd learned it and forgot it and always relearning. But I was like, I'm going to need that policy money somewhere to fill a gap because there are some household gaps at that time and I was like, I got to find some flexibility and some cash. So that was the first time I used it. And boy, I was really glad it was there.
Yeah, and it was easy to get. You didn't have
Yeah.
to nobody asked what your cattle prices were if they were
Right.
gonna give you any money. You had the
Yeah.
money in 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
I don't
It was very
remember. I
handy.
was just trying to look when you started your policy, but of course, their website is under maintenance apparently on a Friday morning. So, do you remember what year you started?
No, I was 13 or maybe it was 15. Maybe
Yeah, I
my
wrote
first
the book
one.
in 14, I think.
I bet you
And
maybe
so
more.
I think you were shortly after. You were one of my first clients from the book. And I wrote the book in 14. So it must have been 14 or 15. So you got a good 10 years under your
And
belt. Did
so
you use it? Do you use the policy more often now or do you still not using it unless you need to?
So I got two, and one I've never used. That was kind of more. I was like, I'm gonna kind of separate this a little bit. Just in my head, it's easier. Things come up personally, so I was like, I'm gonna leave one set aside in case there's some personal use. At least till it kind of grows and there's a little more flexibility in there. I haven't taken out a loan on the main one I'd set up for myself. The first one since 21. I'm looking at a building project in my yard right now that's about to happen. So I'll probably be pulling another policy loan here this fall.
Mhm. Well, good. So some people, I prefer you guys use them all the time because that's what you're supposed to do because the money's just sitting there. But if you don't, it's yours. You get to do what you want with it. I have my money sitting right now, just waiting for an opportunity, right? Not, actually, waiting to see if I have to pay taxes. So I'm waiting. Sometimes I just sit on mine as well. But if however you want to manage it is 100% up to you. So at least it's there.
Right.
So if the bank says, no, I'm sorry, we're not giving you any money for cattle, and you decide you want to expand because we've gotten all this rain and there's grass and you want to go buy some cattle to flip, then you
Right.
have the money to go do that if the bank's going to say no, or if you just don't want to hassle with them
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're a pain in the ass. I mean, I get why they do it. I get it. All you bankers out there, I get it. But I prefer to not have to answer questions.
Right. So
Just let
I'm
me.
building a shop here. Last summer wine blew away. It was kind of in some rough shape and it blew away. So last winter was the best winter ever in North Dakota to go without a building
Yes.
because it was so nice, except for
Yes.
about a week and a half. So when I started this project this spring, I was like, well, everyone's like, when do you want to start? I'm like, well, geez, we're somewhere along the lines, there's going to be a construction note and whatnot, like 8% interest here. Let's kick the can down the road here a little bit. As long as it's up before the snow falls, it'll be fine. And we'll kind of match some stuff up with some cash sales and Bulls policy loan. And maybe the bank won't have a very big portion of this. So
Yeah. Well, that's
that's
good.
my mindset,
Yeah.
right or
I-
wrong.
Very wrong. Yeah, but you can always, maybe you can't refinance that one. It's still better than 23%.
Well, right. It's a
That's what
plan. Nobody
that's
says it's
what
a good
Nelson
plan.
would say.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that if you guys, I hope that helped everybody listening, that you guys got an idea kind of, you don't have to have, what's nice about Shane is you don't have to have all your numbers in order. If you're single, maybe it's a better time to do it than if you're married. But if you're married and your spouse still works off the farm, is there anything wrong with just taking the leap and trying it? I have another client that he farmed full time. Now he's going back off the farm because he likes the health insurance. They had some stuff come up on the farm. So he's figured out he only has to work X amount of days a year because he's an electrician. He doesn't need to work a whole lot to be able to get his insurance and all the other stuff. And so it really depends kind of what you're doing and where you're at. But if you never take the leap, you'll never know. Obviously, be smart about it. But if you're going to be so cautious to the point where you never do it, and even ranching for profit, put your time and energy into the enterprise that's making money to see what that full potential is. Because you're losing money by not putting your time and energy into the farm and ranch. All right, Shane, thank you very much. I appreciate you being so open and sharing and all the things.
Yeah, this was fun. It was a good way to start my morning. So,
Yeah, well, good. Fantastic.
right. So I was good. Glad. I hope the listeners got something out of this. And I mean, if there's anybody has any other questions, they can find me somewhere, track me down, and I'll be happy to have another conversation with them if they want to.
Okay. Yeah. If you guys want Shane's information, I don't want him to be bombarded with like crazy phone calls. So reach out to me and I will share Shane's information. Unless you want to give everybody in the world your phone number.
No, no.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
All right. Reach out to me. I can share Shane's information with you if you just need someone to kind of bounce some ideas off of. Otherwise, you guys know the routine. If you need anything, you reach out to me, maryjo@withoutthebank.com. If you've not gotten your books yet, why? Go get your books and then schedule your appointment. All right, you guys have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Farming Without the Bank podcast. We hope today's episode has inspired you to take control of your finances in new ways. Don't forget to check out our website, farmingwithoutthebank.com, and engage with us on our Facebook page, Farming Without the Bank. Join us next week as we smash more financial myths and empower you to accomplish your financial goals.